Hi, this is Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz from Israel 365. I have an amazing guest here today, a person I've respected for a very long time, Nitsana Darshan Leitner. She is the founder of Shurat Hadin. Shurat Hadin is a hugely effective tool battling terrorism, battling the forces of darkness through the legal system. She's a very tough person. She's won a lot of serious battles. And the reason why I very much want to speak to her today is we know that Israel is under fire these days. There's a lot of fighting going on, a lot of there are rockets in the south, and Jerusalem is full of riots and violence. And there's one of the things that deeply disturbs me is that when I write stories, I like it to be based on the truth and based on facts. And there's been a lot of talk about what's called the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. And most of the media is making it out to seem as if Israel, most specifically, right-wing extremists are just going in, forcibly removing Arabs from their homes that they legally own, kicking them out, and saying you cannot live here because you're Arab. And that is that, as my understanding is, that is not the truth. But I'd like to hear the truth from Nitsana. She understands it, and she is a truth speaker. Hi, Nitsana. Thanks so much for
Hi,
coming.
Leo.
Thanks so
Thank you
much for
very
coming.
much.
So could you tell me what is the truth about Sheikh Jarrah?
Look, Sheikh Jarrah is a neighborhood in Jerusalem. That's the Arab name, Sheikh Jarrah. In Hebrew, it's Shimon HaTzadik. And that's a neighborhood that people live there throughout the years, Jews and Arabs. The Jews were living there prior to 1948, and they were deported or expelled when the Jordanians took over this parcel, and came back after 67. But in order to make sure that they are there legally because their houses were taken away and they were not there for a long period of time, they purchased the land. You know, it's like what Abraham did with the cave of Patriarch. He purchased the land. And they did it throughout the years. However, there still were Arabs that took over their houses, took over the legally purchased land that they had. And then the Jews did not have a choice but to approach the Supreme Court to get in order to expel the Arabs. And they did.
When was this?
Court usually. That was recently. That was recently. So we have this in a Supreme Court, which usually, vacates Jews from their houses. This time said that the Jews have a right on their property that they bought, and the Arabs have to leave. And that caused riots. Not because Arabs riot when they have to leave, as we saw as Khan al-Ahmar, because Hamas was looking for a trigger to start riots, to blame Israel for not having the election, the Palestinian Authority, and they used Sheikh Jarrah in the time of the end of Ramadan. Jews are coming in, Jews have no right to live in Arab neighborhoods, etc. Jews stole the land to come and provoke against this. It's very hard to prove because there is no strict registry of this of lands in East Jerusalem, as all the territories under the Jordanian control. So they had to go to the Supreme Court to get approval that this is their case. Yes, it's a phenomenon in Israel that Jews want to live everywhere, and they go and purchase apartments and purchase houses and make a statement that they want to live in places, even if they are Arabs majority there. Here we see it in Jaffa, we see it in Ir David, we see it in East Jerusalem.
I'm also, as an American, I grew up in America. This is, I kind of have to laugh, because what you're saying is, okay, so you have someone wants to go live in a neighborhood, and because the neighborhood is a majority or actually ethnically one type, then this new ethnicity cannot move in. So all these people who are saying, no, no, the Jews cannot go into Sheikh Jarrah, they're actually saying, no, no, Jews can't live anywhere they want. Isn't that sounds like racism to me?
That's true. It is racism. Of course, it is racism. The Jews that the rabbi that was beaten in Jaffa was beaten just because he's a Jew that had the guts to purchase an apartment and to build a Beit Midrash in Jaffa, which has an Arab majority. Yeah, when Arabs cannot live in Jewish neighborhoods, they call racism. When Jews cannot live in Arab neighborhoods, that's perfectly fine because it belongs to the Arabs.
And there's also, and this whole issue of does it belong to Jews? It's not, even getting the facts is a bit problematic, because there is a law under the Palestinian Authority. It's on the books that you cannot sell, that a Palestinian cannot sell property to a Jew, and it's actually capital punishment. There was a case.
Indeed.
There's a case not so long ago where a Palestinian was accused of this, and he was actually taken into custody, tortured, and because he was an American citizen, he was released. So if you go up to, so if a Palestinian comes and says, if they go up to the Palestinian and say, did you sell this house in Sheikh Jarrah to the Jews? He's not going to say, yes, I did.
100%. 100%. And this is why they're using straw men to be the middleman. The truth owners of the houses, the Arab owners, sell it to the middleman, and the middlemen go and sell it to the Jews. So they come and say, frankly, truthfully, we didn't sell anything to the Jews, right? They're able to say that. And then the middleman, nobody really can trace him. He's the one who's hiding. He's the one that put his neck out there, but he's the one that makes most of the money. So everybody is pleased overall. He takes the risk. The owners don't risk their life, semi-risk their life, but not totally. And the Jews are the Jews.
I'm a little surprised, actually, that the Supreme Court, that the Israeli courts upheld the purchase of the land and ruled in favor of the Jews. As an Israeli, I'm kind of surprised at that. It doesn't always work that way. It's very political.
Sometimes the Supreme Court does good things.
Yeah, I think they played that game where they understand that.
Look, there is a limit. There is a limit. That's the burden of proof in when you go and purchase lands from the Arabs is on you. Usually, when you show a piece of paper saying that you are the truth owner of a property, the court believes this piece of paper, and the other side who wants to contrast it, come and prove the opposite, come and prove a need to prove that this is not true, that the paper is fake, the sale is fake, and he's a truth owner. When you go and purchase from Arabs, you have the burden, even though you purchase it, even though you have the paper in your hand, even though it's registered on your name, you still have to go and prove that you are the rights.
I even remember there was a case in Hebron where a large building, not a single house, got purchased by some Jews. They videotaped the purchase, and then they even hired the person they bought it from to do construction on the house. And they had all of this documented, and the court still ruled against them, kind of. So it's, when you say the burden of proof, it's way beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's
true. And that makes the situation in Judaism very, very complicated.
And this is
This
not
is
even
why
Judea and
people,
Samaria, which might make it even more complicated.
it's Jerusalem.
I,
The same,
I
but the same law governs. The same law applies, the Jordanian law and the Ottoman Empire's law and the military law that takes over.
I think there's also an additional problem because it's the eastern section of Jerusalem, in that through the elections, we saw that Abbas delayed the elections or postponed them or called them off because of an issue. He wanted the Arabs in East Jerusalem to vote at the polls, which is contrary to the Oslo Accords, and he wanted that in order to express or exert his influence and say, East Jerusalem is mine. East Jerusalem, of course, including the Temple Mount, the Old City. He wanted to express ownership, and I kind of get the feeling underneath that there's the same issue here, that with Sheikh Jarrah, they want to say that East Jerusalem must be ethnically cleansed of all Jews. I'm getting that feeling.
Yeah, well, the reason Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, canceled the elections was because he knew that he's going to lose. And
Yeah.
he was looking for a reason to hang it on the Israelis, and instead, because Israel doesn't let him handle the votes in East Jerusalem, he cancels the race. Might be for the reason that you believe, that he perceives the citizens, the residents of East Jerusalem as Palestinians and belong to the Palestinian Authority, and they have the right to vote. But the more deeper reason was that when they went to the election, or when they announced the going into elections, Abu Mazen thought that he can maneuver and he can manage with Hamas and get them to agree that he will keep going for a period of time. There will be a national unity government and get some concessions from Hamas in order to govern. But then he realized going into the elections that because of his personal corruption and illegitimacy among the Palestinians, there were at least 6 or 7 candidates from the PLO, from Fatah, that announced that they're running to this election. So here they got all the votes of the PLO divided between 6 or 7 candidates. He knew that he is going to lose. And he was warned by the Americans he's going to lose. He was warned by the Israelis that he's going to lose, and Hamas will take over Judea and Samaria. And then he didn't have a choice but to cancel the elections. But he could not say that the reason was that he's going to lose. He had to claim that Israel is responsible. And everybody knows that it's not Israel that is responsible. Hamas understands what the true reason for canceling the elections, and this is why he started the riots. Sheikh Jarrah, as I said, was a trigger. The main reason for this riot is the election.
It's funny, but the more in America, I was very left-wing liberal. I went to university for social work, and then I come to Israel, and I went through political whiplash. Finally, I find myself, as a right-wing settler. But yeah, but I think one of the reasons is that a lot of these issues that we're encountering from the side of the right wing in Israel, they are civil rights issues. For example, here in Sheikh Jarrah, the issue is, will Jerusalem be ethnically cleansed? Is it okay for Jews to live in East Jerusalem? Do the Jews have the right to worship on the Temple Mount? I remember there was this one incident where there was a little bit of a battle over the water fountains on the Temple Mount. The Jews were not allowed to use the water fountains. And in the 1950s in America, that was the whole civil rights movement, was the blacks were not allowed to drink from the water fountains of the white people.
Yeah.
So the imagery was just so I think, and what you're doing is you're saying You're fighting for the legal rights of people who have actually been hurt, and that's a civil rights issue. So, so in a certain way, you're a liberal.
Yeah, I am. Listen, I am in favor of freedom of speech as long as it doesn't incite to terrorism.
Oh,
I'm in favor of fighting terrorism legally as long as it doesn't cause violence. I'm human rights activist by all means.
so that's what I wanted to ask you about. Shurat Hadin, I've always watched it from afar, totally in awe of what you people do. You've won some serious victories against all odds. It seems like all of they call them court systems, the International Criminal Court, the ICC, they all seem pitched against Israel. I want to hear what a little bit about ICC and what you're up to these days. It's really I've been amazed so far.
Listen, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in The Hague decided to open an investigation against Israel. They and the court approved jurisdiction, meaning that she say that even though Israel is not a member in the International Criminal Court, she still has jurisdiction because the Palestinian Authority is a state, is a sovereign state, and as such, she has a right to sign their own treaty and to join the court. Palestinian Authority cannot be a state. They don't comply with any of the criteria of the international law to form a state. They don't have borders, they don't have population, they don't have foreign policy, whatever. But she decided that this is what's going to happen, and nothing can stop her. And now Israel is having a huge problem because the Palestinians allege two things. First, that the IDF soldiers have using excessive force against Palestinians and killed innocent Palestinian people, which is a war crime. And the second, the issue of the settlement being a violation of the international law because an occupying country cannot transfer its population to live in occupied territories.
That'll be the subject of a video. We'll do it some other time. That's another subject I have a lot of interest in.
It's a complicated issue and it's a very hardcore one. The state of Israel was asked by the court if they want to investigate these crimes themselves, because the idea of the international court is to dive and to go into conflicts that there is no court system to investigate and indict. And Israel is known with a very serious court system. Israel answered and said that not only they're not going to investigate these crimes because whatever they think appropriate to investigate, they do. They're not going to participate in the proceeding in the court. They don't trust the court. They don't recognize the court. They're not going to be a formal party to this proceeding. Now there is a problem because Israel, rightly so, said that they are not going to participate. We all know how biased the court is. We all know that it's a political organization run by the UN, whose states that are totally hostile to Israel. And therefore, any ruling of the court will be against Israel. But yet, you can leave this court open. You can't leave it only to the sides of the Palestinians. You have to come and present the Israeli cause as well. And this is what Shurat Hadin does. We're going into the court and we're blaming the real war criminals. We are filing war complaints against the leaders of Hamas, of the Palestinian Authority. We are going after the PLO leaders. What they did, suicide bombing, drive-by shooting, even last night, shooting 150 rockets. Who would imagine, who would tolerate such a situation, shooting 150 rockets into civilian areas during a night? That's all considered to be crimes against humanity. It's called genocide. We're going after these war criminals. We also coming and
So you're
putting pressure
taking you're,
on
you're
Palestinian
taking on the
Authority.
ICC? You're taking
We're
on the
taking on
ICC?
the Absolutely. Israel is not going to do it yet. The Israeli court has to be heard. We're bringing the victims of terrorism. We're bringing, even in the matter of the settlement, this is a tough issue. But we're coming and say that Israel is not the only country that occupies territories. Let's say it's occupied. You and I and a lot of people in Israel do not agree.
I have a big thing with other media that use that term. It's horribly inaccurate.
They're not occupied yet. This is the position of the court, and now we have to deal with reality. So reality is that Israel is not the only country in the world that occupies territories. Nor Turkey occupies northern Cyprus, and Morocco occupies Western Sahara. Russia occupies Crimea and Georgia.
There's of course
So we
China,
go and
Tibet,
file.
China, and a lot.
Absolutely. So we went and filed a worker complaint against Turkey for occupying northern Cyprus.
Wow.
And on 30 long pages brief, we wrote what Turkey is doing in northern Cyprus, how they build universities, how they build hospitals, how they give tax incentives to their residents to live in northern Cyprus, exactly what Israel is doing. Wow. So now we want to see how the court is handling this case. We want to tie the hands of the court not to rule against Israel if they are not going out.
Also, I want to point out that the Palestinian Authority actually agreed not to bring a case against Israel. It was actually a legal agreement with the United States, and when they violated that, that was the reason for the United States government shutting down the Palestinian mission in Washington, D.C. It was clearly agreed that they would not do this. And if they did, this would be the result. And they did it. And Donald Trump shut down the mission, and Joe Biden opened it back up again now, even though...
Yes, all the sanctions, it's true, all the sanctions that were put under Trump administration on the International Criminal Court were lifted by Biden. Trump was furious for the court to open investigation against the American soldiers in Afghanistan. And he utilizes force according to what they call invade the Hague law. It allows the president to put sanctions and to use any force they have in order to secure the life and the freedom of the American soldiers. So he banned the judges and the prosecutors in the International Criminal Court from entering the United States. He seized their assets, he puts economic sanctions on them. Unfortunately, Biden came and lit on these sanctions, left Israel struggling by itself.
Wow. So you're taking on the ICC.
Taking on the ICC, and we do what the Israeli government cannot do. We fight terrorism, we fight the social media for incitement to terrorism. We take banks that wire money to terror organizations into the court because the Israeli government cannot do what we do. The Israeli government and are tied. They have to be politically correct. We don't. We do work with the Israeli government. We run, for instance, a mission to Israel, a Mossad mission, which we meet with Mossad agents and learn about their stories and how Israel fights for its survival with the security forces. It's coming up in October 25th, 2021. And we get the impression that the Israeli government is going hand in hand with us. And we are their legal arm. Anything that the Israeli government is facing, any challenge that has an answer in the legal arena, Shurat Hadin is there.
And I'm
fight on behalf of the Jewish
You've
state.
won some huge victories that I was like, sure, there's no way. I'm like, what are you doing? You're going against these huge multinational organizations and you win. You win.
Yeah. Yes. Thank God we were able to receive $2 billion in judgment and to collect more than $300 million that went to the hands of the terror victims.
Wow. Wow. Nitsana, Thank you so much. I'm gonna be in touch with you just because I really love what you're doing, and I want to hear about your upcoming victories. I think the
Okay, it's a pleasure.
the ICC
Thank you.
is a big organization, but I don't think they realize what they're dealing with when they're taking you on. I think you're gonna put them in their place, God willing. So,
Thank you very much. Thank you for your good work.
thank you, Nitsana. Be blessed, and thank you for coming here.